okay?
Biden is a disgrace, okay? Biden is a full-blown disgrace of a president, of a human being, okay? All of that nonsense about how he's such a moral and decent person, and he really knows how to connect with voters who have suffered from such severe loss. He's such a great guy. Do you think he mentioned this UN investigation?
Never, no.
He gave a speech today about about anti-Semitism and how we must fight it. Which, okay, that's fine, but how about a mention, at least a mention for the Palestinians who are literally buried alive based on this investigation by the UN.
All right, folks, so now that the Palestine protests on campus have cooled off a little bit, we haven't really heard a whole lot over the past week or so, although I'm sure they'll be back very soon. I'm sure we can all bet on that. I've been curious to know, at this current moment in time, where exactly do these protesters stand in regard to Joe Biden? Because as I've pointed out, basically since the beginning, these are essentially a protest against Biden. This is far leftists rebelling against Biden and most of the establishment's approach toward Israel in terms of foreign policy. Now, as a conservative, as a right-winger, if you are one, you may disagree with that, or even if you maybe somewhat agree, you may largely disagree with the type of people who are protesting. But as a functional matter, I have no issue with letting the left sort of fight itself, cannibalize itself. Certainly not good for the Biden campaign, right? We've established that. Now, recently, Biden has been trying to make some public concessions to these people, to the protesters. You may have remembered a couple of weeks ago, he said he was going to be freezing a $1 billion weapons package to Israel, basically trying to say, hey, Israel has to calm down here a little bit. And it was later revealed, however, it was still going right to Israel. And basically what he was trying to do was pretend to make a public concession to these protesters while still continuing to support Israel and basically here trying to play both sides. Now, my intuition for a long time has been playing both sides on an issue that so many people are so polarized on is not going to work, because a lot of the pro-Israel people are very pro-Israel. A lot of the pro-Palestine people are very pro-Palestine. You pick one or the other, but if you're going to try to straddle the fence here, you're ultimately going to get to a position where both sides are mad at you and don't like you. I've been curious about that. That's been my theory. But to confirm that theory, I decided to tune in a couple days ago to maybe some progressive networks to hear what their take was on the recent Biden, again, playing both sides policy towards Israel. And needless to say, I tuned into the Young Turks, I should say, and Cenk, Uygur, and Ana still not happy with Biden. And get this, Ana Kasparian even goes so far as to label Joe Biden a quote-unquote disgrace as a human being. That's literally what she said. Check it out.
Well, they've been pretending all along that Israel is accidentally killing 24,000 women and children, accidentally doing a Where's Daddy program where they purposely murder their family members, accidentally using snipers to kill children and women. Okay.
Biden is a disgrace, okay? Biden is a full-blown disgrace of a president, of a human being, okay? All of that nonsense about how he's such a moral and decent person, and he really knows how to connect with voters who have suffered from such severe loss. He's such a great guy. Do you think he mentioned this UN investigation?
Never, no.
He gave a speech today about about anti-Semitism and how we must fight it, which, okay, that's fine, but how about a mention, at least a mention for the Palestinians who are literally buried alive based on this investigation by the UN?
Yeah, and so it was, okay, it was Holocaust Remembrance Day, and that's why Biden only mentioned Israel and the Jewish part. And I get it, and if he mentioned it on the Holocaust Remembrance Day, a whole heap of people would have ripped his head off, okay? And so who are those heap of people? Yeah, some are media, some are donors, etc. But brother, you can't say on Holocaust Remembrance Day, never again.
As it's happening now.
And then do an asterisk and go, yeah, but it's okay if it's Palestinians or Muslims. It's not okay. And look, so they use the charges of anti-Semitism 24/7 as a political tool, and it's really gross, right? So, but in reality, if you say 1,200 people killed, 860 civilians on October 7th is terrible, which I hope to God you do say, and then you say 34,500 dead in Gaza, 8,000 buried in the rubble. That's over 42,000 dead. Confirmed 24,000 women and children dead is not a big deal. Their lives are not as important as the 1,200 that were lost.
They don't even get a mention.
Yeah,
Cenk. They don't even get a mention.
They don't even get a mention.
They don't get a mention.
Then don't say never again. Just don't say it. If they're going to do false charges of anti-Semitism 24/7 for political purposes to defend this foreign government, well, okay. Then if you say that the 24,000 women and children dead are not as important as the 860 dead on the Israeli side, you're being overtly racist.
Okay, so in other words, the attempts to appease the Palestine side by Joe Biden are not working. Biden's strategy simply is failing. And by the way, as it should, because if you're a pro-Palestine activist here, they're at least smart enough to realize this whole thing where he's pretending to freeze the aid and then doesn't, that is a pure and cheap attempt at a political concession. They're not gonna, they know it's a bunch of crap. At least TYT, give them credit, is smart enough to see that. So are other progressive pro-Palestine hosts like Kyle Kulinski, who has gone out. He doesn't seem like he's going to be endorsing Biden this time around, but he went out and said Biden does a virtue signal and cuts off a couple types of the zillion weapons we send to Israel. And the media unanimously scream, we want 100% genocide, not 95% genocide. We live in a sick society, man. He's been trashing him a lot. And again, folks, it's just simply not working, okay? And by the way, in the process of Biden doing this is what I find to be so funny. The pro-Israel Democrats, which is a lot more than you'd probably think, the establishment people, the donors, etc., they're looking at this and saying, okay, well, you've now betrayed us as well, Joe Biden. Okay, so the entire thing is a bad situation. And if you think this is just refined or regulated to progressive commentators, you would be sorely mistaken, because this issue of the Palestine protests and them being again against Joe Biden and establishment Democrats has gotten so bad that now the DNC, the Democratic National Convention, is so worried, folks, about having some of those protesters you've seen across the nation at their event this year, that they are now, folks, considering making changes to their event where they're basically going to do the thing on Zoom. Right? They're going to go back to the 2020 COVID-style convention, all because apparently of public fears out of these protesters ruining the event. And it gets even funnier because, again, we're talking about the infighting here, where they're hosting their convention this year in Chicago. And apparently the Chicago mayor, who is, of course, Brandon Johnson, of course, he's a Democrat, does not want to fall in line because Brandon Johnson supports the protesters. Okay, so the entire thing is a mess. You're a Democrat national party doing a national convention in a Democrat city, but you can't even avoid being protested by your own side because your own Democrat mayor in this city supports the protesters against you. That is a big word salad. If you're a little confused, ironically, I actually heard this news first from TYT when I was getting ready to film this video. Folks, take a listen to this story. It is simply hilarious. Many of you would question whether or not it's even true. Well, folks, it is true. The DNC is seriously considering this. Take a listen.
Politico is reporting that the Democratic establishment is so terrified of pro-peace, pro-Palestinian protesters demonstrating during the Democratic National Convention this year that they're considering making changes to the entirety of the event and making it semi or partly virtual. Now, this is after the 2020 election where the entirety of the Democratic National Convention was online, which in my opinion was awful, but they did it for obvious reasons. People were social distancing because of the spread of COVID. I get it. Now, the convention for this year is currently scheduled to take place from August 19th to 22nd in Chicago. And the DNC has, of course, already had some experience with this convention going online because of 2020. They also have a lot of experience with protests during the conventions. In 2016, there were some protesters who were protesting the DNC's treatment of Senator Bernie Sanders when he was running for president in the primary. Now, as much as the event planners want to avoid the protesters, it's actually not as easy as flipping a switch if they do want to switch over to online rather than doing everything in person. The donors financing the convention expect the rights of an in-person convention. The political convention industrial complex remains strong after centuries of tradition, no matter how much the operative class relished having total control over what was effectively a multi-day commercial 4 years ago.
Which right there, we'll give you more information here, but right there is just completely hilarious and ridiculous to watch, okay? You're going to change your... By the way, she also says, hey, they've had protests in the past. I'm sure both party conventions have had protests in the past. So you may be saying, what exactly is the big deal there? I think it really boils down to highlighting a big difference between Republican Party politics and Democrat Party politics, which is how each party handles protesters, right? Because as Republicans, I mean, you get protesters at your events. People protest Trump all the time, whatever. But in the GOP, that's something that's looked down on. The protesters, I mean, like, hey, you're coming in, you're disrupting an event, you're kind of just a clown. Yep, have security, throw them out. The whole crowd's going to laugh at you. What's the big deal? Done day. And that's sort of, I guess, the culture you could say in the Republican Party towards any type of protesters who are disrupting the event, whether they're on the far right or they're Democrats or on the far left, whatever. But notice on the Democrat side, because they have this culture so much of coddling left-wing protesters, it's not exactly as simple for their party as just kicking them out and or trespassing or arresting them, is it? It's not that simple if you're a Democrat, because then you're like, wait, but that betrays our progressive values. Wait, but people have the right to protest, all this different stuff. So that's what I find, of course, to be so funny about it. And I think that's the real reason they're scared, because again, the GOP, if the GOP got Palestine or any type of protesters at their event, the GOP would just kick them out and say, hey, look, they're disrupting the event. We got them out of here. It's fine. On the Democrat side, it's going to be a way worse look for them, because even a lot of progressives who may be reluctantly voting for Biden in November, they may look at a bad scene potentially where Palestine people get thrown out the DNC and say, I'm not down with this anymore, okay? So that's what I find to be very funny. And in many ways, it is the Democrats' own fault. Of course, they've built this culture for so many years of coddling BLM, coddling, the Women's March, all these protesters. The moment the protesters, the crazy people turn against them, hey, not so funny anymore, is it? Okay, let's keep listening because it gets even more hilarious.
I can't believe this is like a conversation because they want to avoid protesters. Like, before I continue, Waz, it's just so cowardly to me that they're doing this.
I agree.
It's typical Democratic Party cowardice, half-ass measures. It's just so perfectly Democrat. Like, yeah. So what we'll do is we'll do a roundabout way of getting around the things that people are pissed off about and not address them and not be honest and not be upfront. We'll just basically throw sand in the gears of people who want to demonstrate against our ridiculous agenda. And so you can't be surprised by this. This is just so typical of them.
So here's what they're planning on doing. This is a possibility. They haven't settled on it yet, but in-person speeches from the president, party luminaries and rising stars to draw television attention, while moving party business such as rules and platform votes off the floor and denying would-be demonstrators a chance to seize on contentious debates.
Pause right there. Maybe it's just me. Am I the only one who thinks that strategy does not make any sense? Because I would at least think that you'd be most scared of protesters during the part that is televised, right? People don't watch the party conventions for the actual convention part where they're nominating the candidate and doing all that stuff. They watch it for the speeches, of course. That's why you watch a DNC, the RNC. You're going to still televise that, but you want to move the sort of minutia parts of it, the administrative or bureaucratic, I guess, parts of the convention, the nominating process. You're going to move that online. Again, I'm saying, I don't really see how that makes sense. I would think the worst look for you politically is if you're getting protesters during your speeches, but now apparently you can still get protesters anyway. Whole thing is kind of strange. And by the way, I agree with that other TYT host who's saying it's typical Democrat politics. Why? Because it's a half-assed measure, which is, again, true. That's basically what Biden's entire strategy has been towards Palestine, which has been pretty funny. Okay, again, as I will reiterate, it gets even funnier.
What's ironic about the Politico report, though, is despite the fact that Democrats are clearly terrified of the protesters, they're also simultaneously like downplaying the protesters, pretending like they're no big deal. Democrats are quick to point out that this is not 1968, when Americans were being drafted, or even 2016, when Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders' bitter clash led to a summer convention that included thousands of unhappy Sanders delegates. The number of delegates who are attending as uncommitted, the write-in protest used by Democrats angry over Biden's handling of Gaza, will only be in the dozens.
Yeah, again, so like, what are you so afraid of? You're only afraid of the fact that you're probably going to get a lot more protesters for your stupid dysfunctional party than you're making it out to be. I don't know.
You don't have to take any of it online, right? I mean, if it's no big deal, it's like a handful of protesters that you're concerned about, then why are you guys making all these plans? What's going on? What's happening? So there's another angle to this that I wanted to get into, because Democrats are also worried that the convention is going to take place in Chicago, and the mayor of Chicago is Brandon Johnson. Brandon Johnson is a little more supportive of the demonstrators than the overall Democratic Party is. So they fear that he's not going to crack down sufficiently on the protesters because he has actually publicly sided with them. If there's any mayor that understands the value of protest and demonstration, it's me, Johnson told reporters earlier this week at a groundbreaking, dismissing a question about Senator Dick Durbin's concerns over unrest in the city during the convention. Johnson said, without protests and real demands of a government, people of color and women do not have a place in society. Now, I don't think that Johnson's been a great mayor in Chicago. I'm going to be absolutely clear with you on that. But the fact that he's supportive of the democratic process and people's First Amendment rights to assemble and protest, I value that he is defending that. Now, Martin, the author of the Politico piece, his name is Jonathan Martin, says, when I asked him what his vision of a successful Democratic convention looked like, Johnson repeated the same formulation: safe, vibrant, and energetic, before saying he wanted young people to see what democracy really looks like. At no point did he mention Joe Biden or the importance of the convention in helping the president's reelection. I mean, I don't know if that was Martin's way of criticizing Brandon Johnson, but I don't really think that's Brandon Johnson's job, to be like losing sleep over whether or not the Democratic National Convention is going to help push Biden to victory, you know? But who knows? I could be wrong.
So first of all, it seems to me that Ana Kasparian is just done. She's just fed up with the nonsense of the Democratic Party, which is, of course, good to watch. And I think that represents a lot of left-wing pundits. They're now beginning to say it publicly. And I'll just say this: that's a good thing for us. That's a good thing for our side. Because if their candidate, Joe Biden, there's a lot of distrust around him. There's a lot of just, even if they're going to vote, maybe a lack of enthusiasm, a lack of energy around their candidate. A lot of the average viewers, maybe, of their content are disaffected, perhaps, with Biden or the Democrats. That's called demoralization. I'm all here for it. But beyond that, okay, the Brandon Johnson thing, I just find to be completely hilarious. Okay, it's just so ridiculous. It just summarizes how much of a clown show, how much of a freak show the Democratic Party is in 2024, that they can't even get the act together to where the mayor, who is part of your party, can't even get on your side. He's going to support the protesters. You may be in total chaos. The whole thing is just hilarious. But hey, that's what you get, okay? Because you want the progressive mayors, don't you? You support them. Hey, Brandon Johnson, what were people saying? Hey, look, a black guy got elected in Chicago. This is such a progressive diversity victory. Oh, wait a minute. The black mayor in Chicago says F you to the National Party. And he's like, nope, I support the protesters. I want them to see what democracy looks like. Too funny. Okay, it's just the funniest thing I've ever seen. But yeah, folks, there is basically your update on today's video question of how have the Democrat Party But yeah, folks, there you have it. There is basically your answer to today's question of how has the Democratic Party been handling these protesters? Spoiler, not good. Okay, they're not handling it well. The political strategy's not working, and now the DNC is so scared of protests, they may just cancel the convention. Oh, a little protest. Oh, but let's cancel the convention because of it. So ridiculous. That said, folks, be sure to let me know your thoughts on this entire thing in the comment section down below. What do you think the political implications will be for Biden? How do you think it's all going to play out? Be sure to give your thoughts on that. Be sure to leave a like on this video. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. And until next time, Alpha moves only. God bless. Have a very great rest of your weekend and peace.